Okay, so now we're going to take the second part of the effector assembly video, which is where we attach these effector arms, which are also called carriage arms, which are also called delta arms, which we created in a previous video consisting of the carbon fiber tube and the Traxxas ends, to the effector, which we assembled just a few moments ago. And we're going to do that 3 times. And we're going to use 25mm and 20mm socket head cap screws and 4 nylock nuts each. So the 20mm screws, the shorter screws, are actually going to go here, and the longer screws are going to go down at the effector. Now, we want to make sure that all the pieces are lined up. So this is how it sits on the printer, and this is how the effector sits on the printer. This open space with the 2 recesses for the nuts will actually face the carriage. Okay, so that means that the arms are going to go on both sides here, and the arms are going to go on both sides here. Alright, so let's start with the carriage. Now, of course, this is still attached to the printer in real life, but we've left it off of the printer so that you can follow along easily. I popped the M3 nylock nut into the little recess on the side of the carriage, attach the effector arm, and then take one of the shorter screws, push it through the little metal nub inside of the effector arm, and then I screw it in until it goes into the nylock nut. Of course, when you're doing this on your printer, you'll have to remove the belt, and that's best done by loosening the top frame, sliding it down ever so, maybe 3 centimeters or about an inch, maybe even half of that, and then the belt will just slide off of these 2 little nubs that we attached it to before. So now we can do the other side. Again, it's the short screw. Slide it into this hole. Before I put the nylock nut in first, this time I'll put the nylock nut in second. It doesn't really matter. All that you really need to do is just make sure that the circular part of the nylock nut is on the outside, because that's the part where it's really tough to screw it in. And then it sits into this little recess nicely. If it doesn't, then you can always reach in with something and get it back out, or you can go in and try to finagle it. And if that doesn't work, you can always take your needle nose pliers, you can grab it, and you can place it into place. And if you really need to get creative, you can take one of the 3mm screws, this is a little trick you can do when things aren't cooperating well. You could get this threaded through here, which takes a little bit of an effort, and then you can use the screw to seat it in whatever way you want to. Okay, so now we can take the screw and screw it the rest of the way in. Now, what's important to remember is that the belt travels in this little area, so you don't want to use a long screw. You want to use one that only will take you out to here. And then the tightness is being held, the screw is being held in not by the plastic, but it's actually being held in by the nylock nut. So just use the nylock the, the Allen wrench to tighten the screw into the nylock nut, and life becomes very, very easy. Okay, so it would now sit in your printer like this. The arms would be loose and dangling, and that's okay. Now, the next thing that we're going to need to do is to attach the effector to the carriage. So, since this is sitting in the printer this way, we want the effector to sit this way. The recessed holes are here. So, we'll just take the nylock nut, we'll put it into the recess. If you want to pre-drill the outside holes here, that's fine as well. I've done that on this one, but it's not absolutely necessary. It'll be tight, but it'll still go through. And if it doesn't want to go in nicely, if it wants to play games with you, then you can always start the screw in first and use the torque of the screw to pull the nut into the recess. Which is what I'm going to do here. And I'll keep screwing this in until I can see it start to come from the hole on the inside of the effector. And that's when I know it's time to put the nylock nut in. It's getting close. Okay, so now you can see that the screw is coming out. I can put the nylock nut on it. And I can tighten it the rest of the way. These wires get a little bit tricky, but it's actually easier to do it this way, in my experience, than to try to attach the hot end to the effector later on. Because the screws from the effector to the mount just really are finicky. You can continue to work this in until the nut is completely into the recess. And there we go. And then we want to repeat the same thing on the other side, just like this. And that will mean one side is finished. And then the next step is to go all the way around and do the two other carriage sides in the same way. And that's the conclusion of the video.